Thank you. Dr. Gibson, President Inman, Board of Trustees, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk through the current A to F system and kind of just give you a big picture overview of where we are as a state in regards to A to F, what the timeline is that's associated with the implementation of A to F, and how this may or may not play out in the legislative session. As Dr. Gibson stated, I'm on a point of order, I guess, is I'm on this agenda item as overview, and then it says and board consideration of related resolution. The resolution is separate, a complete separate agenda item specific to the board. I'm here just to share the A to F information and just educate you on that.
I'll share the resolution information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think it's good to start with kind of a big picture overview of where we are and how we got here. So the last legislative session, House Bill 2804 was passed. And in that legislative session, there was a call to form a Texas Commission on Next Generation of Assessments and Accountability. And the purpose of this commission was to really look at the state of Texas, our assessment program, and the current accountability system, and to get some input from key stakeholders across the state about where do we want to head as a state in regards to assessment and accountability, and what are the roles of assessment and accountability in the state of Texas. And out of that, what the commission had to do was to send this report to the legislature for consideration. And there were actually elected legislators on the committee. The committee was chaired by our neighbor here, Comal ISD, Kim Andrews, superintendent. And there were 9 recommendations that came out of that. One was to consider an individualized integrated system of multiple assessments using computerized adaptive testing. That's one recommendation. Number 2 was to allow the Commissioner of Education to approve locally developed writing assessments and to do away with the STAR writing as it exists. Number 3 is to support the continued streamlining of the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, so to get us to a place where there are fewer standards that our teachers are responsible for teaching and our students for learning. Number 4 is to limit state testing to the readiness standards. So currently you have 2 types of standards. The readiness standards are the ones that are indicators that the student is ready for the next grade level, and ultimately in high school shows that they're ready for post-secondary readiness, whatever that next step would be for students, whether it be workforce or college or military. Number 5 was to add college readiness assessments to Domain 4, and I'll talk a little bit about Domain 4 here. So to really think about what role could SAT and ACT play in showing that you're college and career ready. Number 6 was to align the state accountability system with the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind. Number 7 is to eliminate Domain 4, post-secondary readiness for state accountability calculations for elementary schools. That'll mean more to you in a minute when I get to that one, but it's basically doing away with the elementary requirement in Domain 4 that you'll learn about in the overview here. And then number 8 is to place greater emphasis on growth in the first 3 domains of the accountability system. Currently, 1 domain looks at growth. This commission was suggesting that we look at growth in 3 of the domains. And then lastly, to retain the individual graduation committee option for graduation. And that is a bill that was passed the last session that allows a group of stakeholders to sit around the table and determine if a student should be allowed to graduate if that student has not passed one of the state required assessments at the time of graduation. So those were the 9 big kind of recommendations the commission put out. And the reason I'm starting with that is because that occurred in the same bill that required us to implement an A to F system. So the A to F system looks like this today. So this is in development with an implementation date of 2017-2018. So Domain 1, so let me just kind of walk you through. Domain 1 is student achievement, and that's what we think about when we think about the tax test that came before STAR, the TOS test, TEAMS, TABS. It's just overall how are students performing on the state assessments. Number 2 is student progress, so how are students progressing from one year to the next. Number 3 is closing performance gaps. How are students doing How are we doing in closing performance gaps of subgroups? So low socioeconomic is one in particular that we're looking at here. Number 4 is post-secondary readiness. So how ready are our students for post-secondary options? Again, that's entering into the workforce, entering into a 2-year or 4-year, or enrolling in or enlisting in the military. And then domain 5 is the community and student engagement, and that's the one that every school district in the state of Texas determines and sends out a survey and gets feedback from stakeholders, and then you determine your rating on that particular domain. So as you can see, the way it's set up currently, what the state's considering is domain 1 or 2, whichever of those 2 grades is better for your campus or your district, and domain 3, and domain 4, and domain 5. And you see the percentages where 55% of your overall rating would come from domains 1 through 3, 35% would come from domain 4, and 10% from your local accountability system. So remember, every campus gets a rating and the district gets a rating. Each of these domains is assigned a letter grade. Those letter grades then move up into one overall grade for the campus and for the district. What was released recently was only a letter grade for each domain, and they didn't move it forward as far as calculating an overall grade for each campus or district. And a reminder on domain 5 over here, the community and student engagement. What you look at there as a district is you look at how is our fine arts program doing, what about wellness and physical education, community and parental involvement, 21st century workforce development programs. So how are we doing in preparing our kids for 21st century workforce? Second language acquisition opportunities. So that would be like the dual language program that you have here. Digital learning environment. So how are we equipping our kids to be able to live in a digital age and digital environment? Dropout prevention strategies. How are we doing at preventing dropouts, and then how are we doing recovering those dropouts? Education programs for GT students, and compliance with statutory reporting and policy requirements. So you look at all 9 of these, and then you gather some data locally, and then you assign yourself a grade for that domain 5. So all those then go into calculating an overall grade for the campus, for each campus, and then for the district. So I want to walk you through this timeline because this is important, because some things will happen in this system, and it will look different than it looks today, and there are a lot of different opportunities for that to happen. So the 85th legislature convened for 140 days with the regular session ending May 29, 2017. The legislature required that A to F report that they received a couple weeks ago be sent to them just prior to the session beginning, so they had that information for consideration of what they want to do with the A to F accountability system in this session. So there's still time to have some input to fix it. And as you're hearing in the media, a lot of our school districts are pushing against it and saying that it's a bad system and that it really needs to be reconsidered in this session. Late January, additional tables and reports and training materials will be provided so that we can continue to help educate the school districts on how this system works. February, final decisions for 2017 accountability. So we have a current accountability system going on right now. We continue to live in that accountability system where you're either going to be met standard or improvement required. That's what you're living in right now. Those levels will be set for that system for this school year, and that will be your accountability rating for the 16-17 year. And this system is your accountability rating for the 17-18 year. Summer of 2017, districts and campuses report to TEA which of the 3 indicators that they choose to use for domain 5. So back here on domain 5, while there are 9 indicators you look at as a district, you choose the 3 that you want rolled into the accountability system. So you likely choose your top 3, right? By August of 2015, the 2017 accountability ratings are assigned, and again, that'll be the last time we use those, where you'll either be met standard or improvement required for the 16-17 school year, each campus and district. Spring of 2018, districts and campuses assign themselves a rating for each of the 3 indicators using domain 5, and an overall rating of A, B, C, D, or F for domain 5. Once that is assigned, By August 15th, 2018, TA assigns each district and campus an overall rating of A, B, C, D, or F, and a rating for each domain beginning with 17-18 school year. So once you assign and let TA know where you landed on domain 5, they use that as 10% of your overall grade and assign a grade using these other domains. So I just want to quickly walk you through the 4 domains. So currently, in our accountability system, we have 4 indices. So index 1 is now going to become domain 1. And I want you to focus on the red letters here, okay? So student achievement, what they're going to look at is STAR, grades 3 through 8, and into course, STAR scores, basically. Currently, the labels that we use are unsatisfactory, satisfactory, post-secondary ready, and advanced. What's being proposed right now is that these move to the right-hand column. So does not meet, and then I think you could put grade level behind that, approaches grade level, meets grade level, masters grade level. There's a lot of pushback on this language right here. TASA just released something today indicating that they think that this miscommunicates to our public, because the public might read this as if you're satisfactory that you're just approaching grade level, when really satisfactory means you're on grade level. So again, these are just out for discussion right now, but this is what's being proposed as of today. Index 2 currently will be called Domain 2, and what this looks at is progress. All right, so STAR progress and then progress for our English language learners. So basically what this is looking at is standardized test scores. How do students perform from one grade to the next? So there has to be a beginning grade level. So when you're a 3rd grade, you could have a 3rd grade reading score in STAR and then a 4th grade reading score, and you could see growth. But there are some tests where the assessment is not given every year, so you can't assess growth on those. So it becomes really limiting on what you can. Also, when you move on to end of course, you can't compare Algebra 1 to a geometry score. All right, so the student progress, there are limited assessments available to measure student progress. That's Domain 2, and the way this works is, here's a graph that you could to kind of help you understand how this will work. So if in 3rd grade you were at approaches and you hit approaches again, that's your expected growth, so you'd get 1 point. If you move from approaches up to meets, then you get 2 points. So if you move up 2 steps on the ladder, you get 2 points because you exceeded your expected growth. So your expected growth is to be at the same level, and that gets you 1 point. If you do not have growth, then you get 0 points. So it's a 0, 1, 2. Index 3 currently, moving to Domain 3. This one's about closing performance gaps. Currently, this looks at your 2 lowest subpopulations, and Index 3 determines how much growth has occurred for those students. Currently, the way this one sits, it's only looking at low socioeconomic students, and it's a regression analysis, so it controls for poverty. So if you look here on this average line of best fit, the percent of students on free and reduced lunch, let's take a look at the top one. So this student up here, you're expected to be right on this average line in the orange. If you perform above the average, this campus would have received a B because they actually performed above the average in the blue section, where down here at the bottom example, although absolute performance is lower, this campus would receive a grade of A because they exceeded the expectation for how they would perform. So this one has actually a linear regression. So it's a little more, this one has been received a little more positively than some of the others because of that. But that's about really paying attention to how are we doing with different groups of students in our school. And then Index 4, we'll move to Domain 4, and there are several words I want you to focus on here. This is about college and career readiness, post-secondary readiness. So how ready are our students to choose one of those options upon graduation? It's really difficult to find an indicator for these for elementary and middle school in particular. So currently in elementary school, the only thing they have is chronic absenteeism, because if you're chronically absent, you're more than likely not going to be ready for the next grade level and ultimately ready for post-secondary. Middle schools, they have chronic absenteeism and dropout rates. So what that means, though, and what the caution here is if you go back to this percentage, in elementary campus, on Domain 4, 35% of its overall grade would be based on absenteeism. Absenteeism does run along socioeconomic lines. So our Title I schools tend to have poorer attendance than our wealthier schools, and that's a reality. And so the pushback right now is that 35% of an elementary and middle school's grade would be based on basically attendance because there are no other indicators that they can find that would be appropriate. So what I'm hearing right now is that there are some bills, I think a couple have already been filed and some being proposed, that elementary, definitely elementary, and potentially middle school be removed from Domain 4 and Domain 4 be a specific high school domain or indicator. Because look at the other things. So you've got graduation rates, dropout rates in high school, coherent sequence of CTE courses. So that's when you take several courses in a row that could ultimately lead to some sort of a certification or entry into the workforce. That's an indicator of college and career readiness. 12 or more hours of post-secondary credit. So if you take 12 or more college credits, that's an indicator of college and career readiness. Completion of AP or IB courses, meeting the benchmark on TSI, SAT, and ACT, looking at which graduation plan that you're graduating on. Those are indicators of college and career readiness. The other two that I believe will make this list, they're not on here yet, but are enlistment in military and a specific set of industry certifications in specific markets that are high wage, high need, high demand. So those, I think, will make this list too. So while it's easy to find high school things to make this list, the elementary and middle school, keep an eye on that because I think that will be the one that will be challenged here coming into this session. And so the way this would work, again, so your elementary schools only on absenteeism, middle schools on absenteeism and dropout rates, where high schools have graduation rate, graduation plan, and then graduates who meet any one of these. And you see how this is broken up. So for the high schools, 10% of their 30, because remember, 35% goes to Domain 4. So for the high schools, 10% of that will be based on graduation rates, 5% on which plan the students are on, and the remaining 20% is on whether or not they do any of these items over here on the right. And I believe, again, you'll get enlisted military and industry certification added to that list. So that's Domain 4, and that's one that Texas Workforce Commission and Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board are very interested in this one, and it's aligned with the 60 by 30 plan that the TEA, Higher Ed Coordinating Board, and the Workforce Commission are working on together to really meet workforce needs in Texas. So again, this is a work in progress, and I think when you read the commissioner's release, that's what he talked about. This isn't done. We're working on this. He has his hands tied on several things here. He doesn't have a lot of flexibility in what he can do. He has some flexibility in what can go into Domain 4. He does have to address closing achievement gaps in student progress or requirements that he has. So without a bill to change some of this, this is what will be implemented. And so I think that's where a lot of our boards are really looking at a resolution to really communicate to state legislators where they are in regards to state accountability. Again, there's our timeline. There's still time to act. As of today, that's where we stand.